the last 300 years, this country, Scotland, with its beautiful lochs and historic castles, has been part of the United Kingdom, which means its citizens are both Scottish and British. But on September the 18th, 2014, the 5 million people of Scotland will have an historic vote. They must answer just one question. Should Scotland be an independent country? Yes or no? If they vote yes, Scotland's political landscape and the future of its people will be changed forever. In this film, we want to find out what's behind the independence movement. What does independence really mean to the Scottish people? Who wants it? And why do they care? On September the 18th, Scotland faces its biggest challenge since 1707, when it voted for the union with England. But back then, it was the Scottish aristocracy who took the decision. This time, every Scottish adult over 16 years of age can take part in the referendum, which will decide Scotland's future.
I'll be voting yes, I'll be voting for independence.
I think probably no.
To be honest, I've not really decided yet. I'm going to be voting yes.
I'm voting no.
I don't know yet. I think I would need to look at all the facts in that and make my mind up.
The difficulty for many voters are the facts themselves. They can be confusing and contradictory. People who support independence proudly boast of Scotland's abundance of resources. It has North Sea oil reserves, a multitude of world-famous whisky distilleries, and growing investment in renewable energy sources, such as tidal and wind power. They claim that on its own, Scotland could be one of the richest countries in the world. But those against independence argue that Scotland would become isolated and is stronger and more secure as part of the United Kingdom. In places like North Ayrshire, on the west coast, where poverty and unemployment are higher, there are still many undecided voters who feel anxiety for the unknown and are cynical about politics. With the latest polls showing only 39% of the Scots backing independence, the Yes Scotland campaigners are working tirelessly to win every last vote.
Really, it's just a question of how do you feel about the referendum and what's your...
I'm still quite undecided on it. I'm still thinking things over, so I'm not so keen on Alex Salmond, but...
Good, neither am I. I'm Labour to my back teeth, right? But that's not what this referendum is about. It's about the people of Scotland taking control of their own destiny. That's all, right? Now, once we take a decision to be a nation, we then decide what kind of nation we're going to be.
Well, now we're just talking about the Scottish referendum. Loads of kids and animals and babies and stuff like that. Welly boots. Right.
I've got an audience here, eh?
We just wanted to know how you feel about the referendum coming up.
You don't know anything about it?
It's for Scottish independence?
No, nothing about it.
Right, OK, well on the 18th of September we've got to vote it. You've got to vote, everybody's got to vote.
Oh, I know about that, I just don't know what I'm voting for.
Got you, right, OK. Right, what's important to you then? What would you say is important to you? What would you like to see change in this country?
I don't know, nothing specific.
Well, I'm sensing there's lots of wee kids about. Are they yours?
Yeah, I've got 4.
You've got 4, right?
Yes.
Well, there's one good thing for you as a start. Scottish independence is going to bring free childcare.
Oh,
so
right, OK.
You could go out to work and it's not going to cost you.
Because Scotland can afford to do that, but...
We can afford to do it, but absolutely, because we're one of the richest countries in the world.
Oh, well, that's not so bad then.
We're subsidising the UK just now.
I don't really know who to vote because what politicians can you believe? Do Do you know what I mean? Not what.
Well,
you can't believe any politicians.
See, just on a very simple basis, if you vote to control your own affairs in Scotland, first of all, you know where your MP stays.
Aye, true.
Which means you can go and chap his door.
I know.
You don't have to jump a train down to London, as I have done on many occasions to campaign on different things. So that's the first thing.
There's some websites, they're all non-political, so you can go in there and you can get some information on it. What's your normal sort of way of voting? Do you normally vote
I
for
don't vote
parties?
at all.
You don't vote at all, right? Okay, that's all right. Well, maybe this one could be your one time that you will,
I probably will be,
because this is voting for your country rather than a political party. Well, we'll send you some stuff on that. And listen, thanks for taking the time. Okay, you take care. Okay, bye.
Good afternoon, Yes Scotland. Kat speaking. How can I help?
According to the Yes Scotland movement, young people have the most to gain from an independent Scotland. 16-year-old Saffron Dixon is a passionate activist and devotes all of her free time to the Yes campaign, regularly speaking at public events. She is convinced that Scotland will be a better country when it becomes independent.
Let's make a change.
I think with independence, it can change everything, because independence gives us the power, which means the Scottish people can mould their own country. We'll have actual powers over our own welfare, which means we don't need to drive people into poverty, the fact that they're disabled and can't work. We don't need to drive people into poverty, the fact that they've been made redundant. We can actually pay people a living wage so that they can work and afford to eat. And we can't change the huge gap between the social classes until we get independence.
According to recent reports, Scotland, with a population of just over 5 million, is still one of the most unequal societies in the developed world. The wealthiest households are 273 times richer than the poorest households.
I come from Pollokshields, which is an area where literal streets separate the extreme poverty and the extreme wealth. My old street that I lived in, there's multi-storey flats where people have to pay £300, £400 a month for heating to keep the mould out so that their children don't get asthma or don't get chronic illnesses, and so that their clothes don't smell. They can't afford food because they need to heat. And then on the other side of the street, there's people with £1 million mansions, people whose children have trust funds that never need to worry about anything. There's such a big difference, and that's not just in my community, that is reflected across the whole of Scotland.
In 1999, after the Act of Devolution, a Scottish Parliament was established, giving certain powers to the Scottish people. But the UK government still makes the laws in key areas, such as social security and defence. Pro-independence supporters believe that poverty and inequality in Scotland can only be put right if the Scots have complete control over their own affairs. These views have been championed by the Sunday Herald, the first national newspaper to choose a side in the debate. Its editor believes an independent Scotland will be a fairer society.
In terms of the kind of political culture in Scotland, there is a more caring attitude, an attitude which believes that those who are less lucky and who rely on the state, that those people are in that position through no fault of their own, and that the state has a responsibility to make their lives as good as it's possible to make them, and also to give them the potential to get out of that situation and into work and to be a responsible member of society and contribute to it. I think, I'm not saying there are no people in England that believe that. Clearly, there are thousands of people in England that believe that too. But I think I would trust a Scottish government more to take care of us and to create a fair and a more just society than I would trust the Westminster government.
Since its relaunch as a tabloid, the Sunday Herald has been outspoken about its sympathy for independence and is not ashamed to hold strong opinions.
I think newspapers should express views. Newspapers in Scotland have a proud tradition of being involved in campaigns for social change and constitutional change during the debates on devolution. And I think this debate, which is the most important one for 300 years, is important enough for a newspaper to say, this is our view of it.
On the other side of town, the No Team, recently rebranded as Better Together, is holding a special conference to launch the last 100 days of the campaign.
We were told that there's a world of opportunity out there for us, and I had every right to do it.
Our energy bills are going to go up. We want independence, we're going to pay more on our monthly bills.
Standing alone in a big competitive global market, no thanks.
Businesswoman Tessa Hartman is one of the campaigners for Better Together. She believes that while Scotland has a strong identity, it is hugely enriched by flying the British flag.
I don't really understand where this need for political identity comes from. I think, you know, the Scots have been part of the chemistry and the tapestry, if you like, of Britain. You know, we built half of London. You know, look at the bridges, our engineers, our technicians, our inventors. But yet we've retained a strong identity. And I think that those people who claim cultural identity is only going to be furthered through an independent Scotland are wrong, because for me, I'm incredibly proud to be Scottish. You know, I fly that saltire flag everywhere I can. But the power and the strength and the love that I have for being British is phenomenal. I think we are, as a nation, revered around the world. I think the British landscape and chemistry is envied around the world, and I'm proud to be part of both.
Tessa has a media and PR business, and in 2009 founded the Scottish Fashion Awards.
We've thrived of being part of the British fashion culture. If you were to strip that away, I feel personally in my business that we wouldn't have an industry left. It's a big concern as to what's going to happen to all the jobs. You know, what are the high streets going to be populated with? What's everyone going to do if some of these companies decide to pull out? Because effectively, we need to remember that you are becoming a foreign territory. It's just a catastrophe to think that we're going to shut the door and bring in more bureaucracy to run a smaller country and not be part of this great union. You know, no one can answer the question of what the interest rates will be. No one can actually say what's going to happen to the pension funds. Where are they going to get the money to actually run the country?
Tessa's fears are echoed by the No campaign, which has put forward many pessimistic scenarios if Scotland were to choose independence.
A lot of the kind of campaigning, a lot of the posters, and a lot of that,
they've been misleading.
They've been misleading. I don't think there's been enough straight talking happened yet.
Glasgow-based stand-up comedians Paul Snedden and Keir McAllister enjoy satirising the anti-independence movement.
I mean, that's Better Together. I mean, they called themselves Project Fear. That was the name that the No campaign, or the Better Together campaign, gave to their own strategy, Project Fear. There's only two things that should be called Project Fear, and that's the baddies in Marvel movies and the Catholic approach to sex education. That's the only two things that should be called Project Fear.
We aren't actually setting out to do a show that is pro-independence. We're setting out to do a show about the referendum. And a lot of the comedy we're doing comes out of the cataclysmic scenarios that have been kind of put up by the Better Together campaign about what a dreadful state Scotland would be in if we voted yes.
We might not get the Gulf Stream.
We might not get the Gulf Stream. Yeah. Edinburgh Zoo will have to hand the pandas back to China.
I mean, we had the Defence Secretary came up to Scotland and said that in an independent Scotland, Scotland has to look out for attacks from space. That's the Defence Secretary. And I think in Scotland we've been told the entirety of this campaign that we're too wee, we're too silly, we're too poor, and we've got to think that way. And I think there's a huge mental leap that gets us to the point where we can think that we can do this as a nation. And that's what's holding people back, is that we think, oh, is this going to, you know, it's going to be some kind of post-apocalyptic Eastern European state, you know, we're going to have no money, it's going to be all food banks. Genuinely, people think that's what's going to happen. But in fact, we've got more wealth and more information about independence than any other country that's done it before. I just think Better Together sounds creepy, doesn't it? It sounds like what your psycho ex would say to you after he kidnapped you.
The abundance of information, and in some cases misinformation, has left many voters in Scotland struggling to make up their mind. Radio producer Anna Magnuson is one of them. She remains undecided and would love to have a more honest and less polarised debate.
The different sides are presenting their best case all the time. I want to hear about worst case scenarios as well. I just wish that somebody would say on the yes side, yes, we'll do all these different things, and yes, these are all these opportunities, but, you know, it will be hard. It will be difficult. It's a huge change, and it's not about being Scottish. It's not about if you want to be independent, you're somehow more Scottish than if you don't. I think that's a false argument, and I hate it when people use that argument. It's more subtle than that.
The vote for independence is a one-way trip, and Anna wonders if there's something in the nature of the Scottish people which is holding them back.
Scots are people who have a great appetite for life, but sometimes a dark view of life. There's a story by one of the Scottish poets about a man walking down the street in the Highlands somewhere, and the sun is splitting the sky and it's beautiful, and he meets an old lady coming across along the road, and he says to her, "What a beautiful day." And she looks at him and she says, "Aye, but we'll pay for it, we'll pay for it." And there is that sort of sometimes glass half empty thing with Scots. But when I'm abroad and you ask people and you say you're from Scotland, what they think of is they think of the country, they think of Robert Burns, they think of poetry, they think of music, they think of warmth, they think of the warmth of people here. So the exciting thing, I suppose, if I were to vote yes, would be what else we would be, what else we would be known for, what else people would come to Scotland for. And that is, I am curious about that.
Whatever Scotland becomes, the wider world will continue to recognise the country's iconic symbols. For bagpipers Willie Park and David Weatherspoon, those cultural symbols are at the heart of the independence debate.
I've never felt in any way British. I feel Scottish. I feel comfortable being Scottish. Scotland and England are so different, and I don't believe they should be conjoined. I believe they should be independent nations. I don't think it's fair or appropriate that our country is ruled by a parliament 400 miles away.
Between 1970 and 2014, Scotland has been ruled by Conservative governments it did not vote for. At the election in 2010, the country only returned one Conservative Member of Parliament.
The Tories are designed to keep financial markets stable in London and to make sure the home counties and the surrounding London area are kept wealthy. And the further north you go, and when you come across the border into Scotland, we only matter for two reasons. We produce oil, and there's a nuclear bunker as well to keep the stuff away from England. We don't like nuclear bunkers, and the oil's actually ours.
We will be a prosperous country. With the boom in renewables and a possible West Coast oil boom, we could be the richest country in the world. People in Scotland need to understand this. The way we are being suppressed just now is not good for the Scottish people. We need to move forward.
Willie and David are as wedded to their Scottish culture as they are to their bagpipes. But Willie has an even deeper connection to Scotland's history. His ancestors once gave refuge to Bonnie Prince Charlie, grandson of Scottish King James VII, as he mounted an attempt to claim the British throne.
My family tree extends back to the Jacobites on my mother's side, and it's some my grandfather used to tell me stories that we had Bonnie Prince Charlie in one of the barns up near Speenbridge. I didn't believe the story, but in later years, watching a historic programme, I found out it was actually true. So, the immense feeling of pride of being part of Scottish history, and it's always been really in me since I was a wee kid, you know, growing up. It's always been there. And it's a Celtic It's a Celtic thing. And all the Celtic people throughout the world probably the same feelings with their culture.
Scottish voters at the referendum will be influenced by both emotional sentiment and hard-headed political argument. But whatever the outcome, Scotland has shown that changing the path of history is never easy.